Let's dive right in. Look, we so often picture innovation as this lone genius having a massive eureka moment in a dark garage, suddenly changing the world with some brilliant new gadget. But honestly, that's a total myth. A cool invention only truly becomes an innovation when that idea is actually put into use and produces real, meaningful value. The idea is just the start. It is the implementation that actually matters.
So if you're wondering, is a great idea enough? Just think about how many incredibly clever prototypes, apps, or wildly creative business models completely crashed and burned before they ever even see a customer. The answer, pretty firmly, is no. Creativity is just the spark. If you want to keep that fire burning and actually scale it, you need a system.
And that system is what we call innovation management. It's the highly organized process of finding opportunities, developing those ideas, implementing solutions, and ultimately creating value. And this entire process relies heavily on two massive foundational pillars. First, our resources, which is literally just asking, what do we have? And second, our infrastructure, which is how are we going to organize and govern the stuff we have?
Welcome to This Explainer. I am super excited you're here because today we are going to completely demystify how organizations actually turn those brilliant pie-in-the-sky ideas into market-ready realities. We're going to pop the hood and look at the very architecture of innovation.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the innovation kitchen, look at the 12 ingredients, move out to the innovation garden, design our blueprint, and finally, synthesize it all with some real-world ecosystems.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the Innovation Kitchen, where we look at organizational resources. I want you to think of your organizational resources exactly like a commercial kitchen. You've got your raw ingredients, your specialized tools, talented cooks, a budget, and a delivery network. But having a giant pile of flour, eggs, and sugar just sitting on a counter doesn't magically produce a cake, right? The value only actually appears when you combine those resources effectively.
So the absolutely crucial starting point here is getting our terminology straight. A resource is an economic or productive factor you need to get an activity done. An asset, on the other hand, is something valuable you actually own or use to generate a long-term benefit. To put that into perspective, your customer relationships or the daily labor of your team, those function as resources. But a highly specialized manufacturing machine you bought or a patented proprietary database you own, those are assets. And this brings us to a really powerful concept called the resource-based view. This perspective basically tells us that organizations win when they combine valuable resources in unique ways. Now, we have tangible resources, things like cash, equipment, your physical facilities. Those are super easy to see, but unfortunately, they're also super easy for your competitors to just go out and buy. The real magic, that usually lives in your intangible resources. Your team's tacit knowledge, your brand reputation, your intellectual property. These are incredibly difficult for a rival to just copy, which gives you a massive competitive edge.
Moving on to Section 2, the 12 ingredients for evaluating required resources.
When you really break it down, there are 12 distinct resources required for innovation. And notice, these aren't just isolated checkboxes you tick off. They're a highly interdependent portfolio. You need people for creativity, literally your most important yet hardest to manage resource. You need IP to protect what those people create. You need information and technology to support their experiments. But you absolutely cannot ignore the market side. Marketing, distribution, and customers are what actually convert a raw invention into an adopted innovation. And operationally, you're relying on suppliers, production capabilities, facilities, time, and of course, finance to scale the whole shebang up. Without connectivity between these, being super strong in one area won't save you from a glaring weakness in another.
Here's a wild thought to keep in mind. The most important resource isn't necessarily your multi-million-dollar tech upgrade. A single missing ingredient, maybe a key decision maker is out on leave, or you lack one crucial piece of customer insight, or a supplier drops the ball just once. That one missing piece quickly becomes the bottleneck that stops your entire innovation system dead in its tracks.
All right, Section 3, the Innovation Garden. Let's talk about organizational infrastructure.
Say goodbye to the kitchen analogy. We're stepping out into the garden. If your resources are the seeds, the tools, and the water, your organizational infrastructure is the garden itself. It's the physical layout. It's the rules on who waters what and exactly when they do it. Infrastructure acts as the operating system for your company. It's the procedures, the shared values, the policies that enable your resources to grow efficiently rather than just turning into an overgrown, chaotic patch of weeds. Next up,
Section 4, Designing the Blueprint, focusing on structure and strategy.
You can't just jump straight in and start drawing up an org chart on day one. You have to follow a specific logic chain. Step 1 is vision. What is the desired future state we want to reach? Then mission. Why do we even exist right now? Next up, objectives. What are our specific, measurable milestones? That naturally leads into strategy. What is our broad game plan given our environment and resources? And finally, that strategy dictates your structure. Structure turns strategy into coordinated action by defining exactly who does what and who gets to make the decisions.
When you do finally get to that structure phase, you generally face a choice between two broad design tendencies. On one side, we have the mechanistic structure. It's centralized, highly formal, very hierarchical. It is absolutely perfect for stable, predictable work where safety and strict compliance are key. On the other side, you've got the organic structure. It's decentralized, super flexible, and highly collaborative, perfect for navigating uncertainty, rapid learning, and generating wild new ideas. The crucial takeaway here is that neither one is inherently better. The right choice depends entirely on the stage of your innovation. You might actually use a loose, organic team to invent a new product, but then hand it off to a rigid, mechanistic team to manufacture it reliably at massive scale.
This logic translates into specific, real-world structural blueprints. For example, you might use a functional structure where you group everyone by expertise, like putting all the engineers together. That builds incredibly deep specialization, but it can also create isolated silos where information moves painfully slow. Or you might try a matrix structure, which gives people dual reporting lines, say an engineer reporting to a functional boss and a project boss at the same time. This perfectly combines expertise with a sharp project focus, but yeah, it can definitely lead to conflicting priorities. Your structure literally dictates how information flows in your company, so you've got to choose wisely based on what your strategy demands. Honestly, diagnosing whether your infrastructure supports or hinders your innovation is one of a leader's top priorities.
Finally, Section 5, Synthesis. Let's look at some real-world ecosystems in action.
Let's compare two giants, AirAsia and Apple. AirAsia relies on a brilliant digital, low-cost model. Their critical resources are their brand, their massive data pools, and strong airport relationships. But here's the thing. Those resources only work because of their infrastructure, intense process discipline, and highly optimized digital channels. Apple, on the flip side, is a masterclass in ecosystem integration. Their resources are top-tier talent, massive IP, and mountains of capital. And their infrastructure? Insanely tight design coordination, strict retail governance, and a fully integrated supply chain. The big takeaway here, a competitor literally cannot just copy one single feature from Apple or AirAsia and expect to win. The true competitive advantage resides in the entire complex system working together flawlessly. So, what does this all mean? The absolute crucial point of this entire explainer is what we call the integrated performance chain. Resources are not valuable simply because they exist in a vacuum. You have to combine those resources with a well-designed infrastructure. That specific combination is what creates your true innovation capability. That capability is what leads to market adoption, which drives your organizational performance, and ultimately yields a sustainable competitive advantage that is incredibly hard to beat. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. Take a hard look at your own organization. Audit your own kitchen and your own garden. Ask yourself, right now, which resource is the most scarce in your current innovation project? And perhaps more importantly, which structural infrastructure feature is currently blocking you from fully utilizing what you already have? Finding the honest answer to that question is your very first step to unlocking true innovation capability. Thanks so much for learning with me today.